Hi guys.
Hey,
Hey,
Hi.
Welcome to the green room.
thanks for having us.
We have one new guest, Blue DeTiger. I love that. I was hoping you'd be here in person, but because
I know, change of
safely,
plan.
safely, of course, safely, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But Lynn, welcome back. It's so great that you could make today happen again. That's so nice.
thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. This is the second green room talks of the year, so we're off to an interesting start for the year. But I'll let Hannah do her normal intros, and then we can get our conversation rolling.
Great. Welcome to the Green Room. Starting, we have Jenna Andrews, founder of the Green Room, platinum singer, songwriter, vocal producer, and executive producer for artists such as BTS, Noah Cyrus, J-Lo, Little Mix, and Drake, to name a few. Jenna also A&Rs Lennon Stella at Records and is the co-owner of 27 Music Publishing with Barry Weiss and Sony ATV. Hey, Jenna.
Hey, hey, Hannah.
Five.
Next up, we have Dr. Lynn Ianni, a PhD MFT who conducts brief interactive psychotherapy and EMDR with individuals, couples, and families, utilizing teletherapy approaches as well as maintaining a private practice in Los Angeles, California. After graduating from college at the age of 19 and completing her master's degree in psychology from University of Notre Dame at the age of 21, she has continued practicing psychotherapy for more than 35 years with a broad spectrum of clients. Welcome, Dr. Lynn.
Thank you. Wow, that was a big intro.
That was great. Hannah's so great at this. I love it.
And last but certainly not least, we have Blu DeTiger, who is a multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, producer, DJ, performer, and bass virtuoso, and so much more. Blue has gained over 1 million followers on TikTok since March, and her songs Figure It Out and Cotton Candy have gone viral in over 31 countries and in the US, with a single dropping in the next few weeks. Welcome, Blue.
Oh, yay!
Hey guys.
I'm really glad that we can make this happen. I know this was a bit of a last minute one, but I felt like it was a necessary one because I was like, we were
We've been
talking.
talking about this for a while too.
Yeah, we've been like literally. I mean, since last year, I feel like we've been trying to find the right time to do it. And Lynn, I feel like the last one that we did was so great. So I was just like, oh, need to have you back. And
It's
also, I
so
miss
fun.
you. I miss you too. I
I
feel
miss
like
you too.
um, but no, I mean, honestly, like me and Blue were talking a lot about what we felt like we wanted to talk about in this particular episode, and it felt really fitting to talk about, putting out music as a new artist in this time. And
Yeah.
it's. I mean, obviously, I'll let you talk about it, Blue, but I know that it's difficult because there's no touring, and the pressure is so much. The pressure is a lot more for a new artist because there's so much writing on social media and all these type of things to be able to break your music, because that's really the only outlet, and that also like takes such a toll on everything, like anxiety, all those kind of things that trigger things within us to feel bad. It's like, because it's like this is your moment, especially now, Blue, for you, because this is such a great moment for you in your life. It's like you don't want to be like, oh, am I wasting it, all these kind of things, because you're not able to actually do like everything that you could be doing if everything was normal, you
Yeah,
know
totally.
so but yeah, I mean, I'm sure so many people can relate to that too, like
For
um
sure. Like any job, it doesn't have to just be music,
but like,
but
what is, yeah, like, I mean, obviously, like, tell us, like, and everyone that's listening, like, what has been your experience with that, like, since you, like, obviously since you've been putting music, we've
yeah.
basically been in a pandemic, right? So yeah, talk about
Yeah,
that.
pretty much. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm like super blessed and grateful because it's been going, well, obviously. So I'll start it off with that. Because anytime I like complain about it remotely, I'm always like, I feel bad because I'm so happy where I am and I like wouldn't want to be in any other position, obviously. And a lot of my, I guess, like success maybe wouldn't have happened or wouldn't have happened the same way in the same path if it were not the pandemic. You know what I mean? So there's that on one hand, but yeah, I think just in general, just not getting the stimulants of like going outside and actually interacting with people and playing shows and all of that stuff really affects the whole like thinking and stuff. And just even like with Jenna, we were working on some of my stuff. Like this week I was like so stressed out. Like I think I've developed new like OCD. Even I don't want to say OCD. I know I'm not like diagnosed or anything, but
Yeah.
no, but like I've developed like a sense of like I don't know. I like me and Jenna's like, Blue, you're going crazy. Like I'm going, and I'm like, yeah,
Literally,
because I'm just alone at night. Like my thoughts are just like going insane. And my manager said the same thing to me today. And I think it's because I'm not like, there's so much more time to just sit and like think about all the like really, really specific things. And when you're not playing those shows and getting that positive feedback from like real people and seeing how it's affecting people, it totally changes your like it's hard to be excited or like accept the stuff that's happening when you're not getting that that other outside stuff, if that makes sense.
Like, do you feel like your anxiety and your I don't know, I guess I'm just throwing it out there, but like fearfulness, those kind of things, lack of sleep, like do you think was that apparent before this? Like, did you ever experience things before this period?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I mean, this has heightened it like crazy. Like, I think I'm just naturally in my personality, I'm just like a perfectionist anyways. Um, just like since I was like young.
Interesting.
But,
that's an interesting subject. I like that.
I mean,
I don't.
Oh my God, well, yeah, well, just because it's so like present now, because I was like dealing with this thing this whole week of having to like perfect this like one thing in this song that's coming out, and it was like driving me insane. But yeah, I think that's always been like a personality trait of mine, but I've never had like crazy like anxiety or anything.
But you feel like you've been obsessive in your
Yeah, but now I think I'm being like super upset, which is just part of the just part of like being an artist in some sense. But I think it's just been way more heightened because of all these things, and also just like social media and my attention span and like all these things, which I know like everyone is experiencing.
Actually, Lynn, this is that just made me interested in something. Do you feel like this is, especially with now that everything's living online more than now than ever, do you think people are developing, like, is it such thing to be able to develop ADD? Like, I know that like it's so
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can
Yes, because we're not really present and we're trying to multitask like crazy. And so we're stepping out of the world and getting stimulated from so many different things. You're looking at a website, you're looking at TikTok, you get a text, something else is going on. So you're scattering your energy instead of being able to focus it. And what happens when you do that is you are not present. It's almost like you're sort of like a step removed from your own life.
Yeah, that's what I feel like all the time these days.
Yeah, plus
so weird.
You also mentioned something a minute ago, just kind of like specific to your profession, but it's kind of universal at the same time. Like the anxiety and the feeling like you're isolated is a pandemic. Okay. Depression, anxiety is like crazy all-time high. That's universal. But the thing that you were talking about, which was really interesting, is, we always think about artists and creatives being like introverts because you guys are so busy in here and then you just express what you are doing in here externally.
Right.
But if it feels like you're in a vacuum and you're usually kind of generative because you're interacting with somebody, and so it's a flow of ideas in some back and forth kind of a way, that changes it, because that makes it like you're kind of singing without being able to hear yourself almost.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
So true.
Yeah, right? Like it's harder.
Yeah, that's something I'm like really struggling with now, because I'm so like I need to get like affirmation almost, not for like certain things, but for like this song, say like the master, like I have to make sure everyone checks the mix and like it's all good, because like I don't trust just myself. But then some things I'm like, no, this is wrong, I'm changing. Like it's very situational, but I think now especially I'm like, I don't even know like what to listen to. It's like my own thoughts like not right, because it's
you stop trusting yourself because you're all by
yeah,
yourself.
I'm doubting like crazy stuff, but then I'm like, oh, I know it's right, but like I can't even tell which is like the intuition anymore and what's like the other stuff.
Yeah. And what's interesting about what you're saying is the way that you're talking about functioning with a little bit of OCD or the anxiety kind of perfectionistic quality, it makes you successful, but it also makes you have a hard time enjoying being successful.
Well, that's the exact thing. It's like the balance of yeah, like I'll get like good news, which is like I'm very like grateful and appreciative. Like I always can get that, but grasping the like excitement almost, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'll get like good news and I'm like in the middle of something else and I'm like I don't even like care. You know what I mean?
Yes, because your internal reality isn't matching the external stuff. So where
Yeah.
like some people can just sort of actually their ego gets a lot of external gratification,
Right.
right? But you have to be able to convert it to internal gratification, or it's like fleeting and it's over in 2 seconds. And that sets up what you were talking about, Jenna, like that multitasking thing, because we're searching for the next quick fix because we're feeling so depleted. And then it's like out there, out there, out there, but it only lasts a nanosecond, and then you got to find a new one unless you can internally generate it, which is where you're shifting to as you start to trust yourself again, or you go with your intuition and recognize that that is what got you to the place that you are externally. But now you want to center in and hopefully like really appreciate and enjoy you as much as you said you were really kind of grateful about where you are. That was awesome. But now you want to like inside go like, yes, that feels so
Yeah,
good.
exactly. Like, I
got
feel
it.
I'm not getting the like the dopamine like rush of like,
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? Because also you're not, I think this brings it back to like the live thing. Like just for me specifically, like I love performing. Like I need that energy like swap between people. And like I come from like a DJing background, which is like very much that, and like reading the room and stuff like that. So it's like so like I can't even tell what's up anymore.
Well,
Like the
that's
numbers aren't the same, you know, like just like numbers and reading like it's just not, you know what I mean?
No, that's really interesting. I was thinking like per the ADD thing and talking about developing ADD, because I actually didn't realize that like that you could develop it, like that's something that like you're not, so it's not, you're not born with it. You're saying that you can actually develop ADD. That's like a real thing.
there's all sorts of stuff like it's not like a trait as much as it is sort of a predisposition that then you can either like make more intense because of the way you choose to behave or think or plan or act or whatever, or but it also like either gets reinforced or sort of not reinforced with whatever you do. And interestingly, ADD and OCD
Right.
combined are like the perfect combo to do what you guys do, because you have to be a little create. ADD is creative,
Yeah.
right?
You
Like
feel a
that's
little
cool.
crazy to make like cool stuff.
Yeah, but it's always like a continuum, right? Of like you don't want to go too far out there with any of it, but moderation, like a little bit of ADD is necessary, because if you're just like a widget rule follower, you know, sort of assembly line worker person, you're not going to be creative. You're going to be very structured and very controlled, like OCD. But when people who have ADD can use OCD as a style of functioning, it harnesses their creativity into something that actually then becomes productive as well as creative.
That's so
Wow,
interesting.
so I feel like that you did.
God, Jen, I feel like we both have like a sense of that.
I
I
bet
would-
everybody you guys hang out with has it, because otherwise you wouldn't know each other.
Oh my God.
So true.
Because you were saying you feed off people's energy and that you need that, but it's also interesting to bring the ADD OCD thing up, because it's so hard to be present and enjoy the moment. And like you said,
Yeah.
you're grateful, and you're saying you're grateful because I feel that it's almost like we have a sense that we have to say, oh, I feel grateful, or because you feel guilty like for certain
Yes.
things, but it's like you're not necessarily being honest with yourself, because do you actually feel that? Because right, like that's what I'm learning, because I oftentimes I'll say things, but then when I actually check myself for a second, I'm like, do I actually like feel that though? Like, do I mean that? Because when I say to myself, oh, I feel really good, or I feel proud, or I feel, like really happy about this, then I'm like, but why do I not feel like that feeling? And then it's just like this guilt, and then it's just this ongoing thing.
Like, where is that from though? Is that
It's
just
because that there's, as soon as you get close to the finish line you've established in that goal, because of the way you work on the inside, you move it. So it's like, okay, next, got that done.
Right.
Next, because it's very future oriented, not present.
I just bought like a whiteboard. I have like my checklist. I'm like on that wave right now.
Yeah.
I'm like on it.
That makes perfect sense.
But do you think that's a healthy way to be? Like, I mean, I know that's a weird question because we are creatives, and I guess it's not like there's no, I guess, real perfect answer. But do you think that's like, I wonder sometimes if that's healthy, because I feel like when you overthink so much, it's like it can be like it
Paralyzing.
paralyzing, and also have such a negative reaction in the sense that, you know, you overthink it to the point where even when it comes to your art, it becomes not good anymore. Because you're just
and if it was, you wouldn't
like,
recognize it because you can't accurately like assess it anymore. So you remember we talked about this last time, like the perfectionism often creates procrastination, which then leads to paralysis too. So you're sitting there looking at it and you're not really functioning in a way that's super productive because you're spinning instead of moving.
Is that the thing? It's so funny. I do remember talking about this because I don't know if we mentioned this, but I remember, like, it's interesting that there's 3 Ps. Is that like on purpose?
Yeah.
Is it actually?
It's called the 3 Ps. Yes.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, oh, okay. Because like I feel like that can be something that you remember. Now I'm like, oh, okay, exactly. Yeah, total sense. Because I mean, that's often what I feel, because in my day, like, I'm the kind of person that, like, I'm so driven, so I want to be, and Blu's like that too. And I think that, like, when you're so driven, you want to accomplish so many goals. Sometimes it's like, it's one, you don't get the time to enjoy them. 2, right. It's sometimes you can't fully experience or actually do the job that you feel good about because you're so, like, focused on the next thing, which you haven't even first finished the thing before.
Right.
Like, I don't know what are the best formulas to help with that? Like, I'm sure that, like, anybody watching right now completely relates, because this is something that I think, like you said, so many creatives struggle with. And I think it actually does cause for, like, you know, I know that that's not necessarily what you feel, Blu, but I mean, I can cause for depression, you know, because it's or writer's block or things like that. Right. And I don't know. I mean, is there, like, specific things that you can do in your day to sort of help alleviate these things or to feel more present? Obviously meditation, but any other?
Yeah, and really simple kinds of things that are like, take a minute. It's that mindfulness minute where instead of just going, like you did a beautiful job of being gracious about your success, you know, and you're talking about where you are right now, which is all lovely and important, and that's great. But the piece that is not quite connecting yet is to literally close your eyes and just say internally, thank you for this moment, and let it land a second. Or do something in nature where you're in touch with, like, the earth and somehow feeling more grounded. Literally. And the other thing is, when you use your senses, it helps ground you. What, you know this?
My shirt says literally.
Oh my God, that's funny. I couldn't read it before because your hair is there. Yes, literally. So in the sense that you allow yourself to kind of, like, connect to that experience, it helps with that feeling of disconnection that you're talking about, because you're spectating instead of being present.
Totally. That's mindfulness. I have to do that every day, like every hour.
Do you
know what? You can. I do it all the time. It's important.
Well, I didn't know an interesting question that just came through. Have you ever written a song or produced something while having a panic attack or anxiety?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, I really like that question.
I don't think I have necessarily, like, I don't really get, I feel like I'm always, like, on edge sometimes, but, like, I don't think, I'm trying to think, honestly, probably though.
Oh, can I say something? This is really interesting. So a lot of times, I think one of the other pieces that's very specific to you guys in the way that you're so creative and how you work, I have had more clients come in and say, like, I'm afraid to do something like real therapy because I will lose my creative edge. Or if I lose all my angst or my feelings, are they going to get, like, watered down? Because they think that they are more creative when they're having, like, dramatic emotional swings and can, like, create from there, which is just like that question that person asked, which is really good.
I'm like, I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like I'm way better when I'm, like, centered and grounded. Like, I think the best music I was making was, like, right when or like all my EP songs, like, I did a lot of them right when the pandemic was, like, at a point where everyone was kind of settled into the quarantine, and I felt, like, super comfortable in my, like, routine almost, and I didn't have any like outside distractions, you know. And then I think that's when I was, like, my most, like, calm, grounded state, like, feeling great. That's when I was, like, making the best stuff, I think, for me.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I was just, like, going with the flow, and I was like, this is sick, whatever's coming out now, like, this is fire. And I just I just went with it. So for me, that's when I make the best.
So
I
how
call
did
it
you
time and
create
flow.
that? What did you do given the situation that was going on?
Yeah, I think it was yeah, like less pressure. Maybe like there was no pressure, and I think a lot of songwriter, or like a lot of artists were talking about this, how they're making stuff they really liked during that time because there's no like, yeah, there's no pressure. Like I didn't have to be anywhere at a certain time. I also
Yes.
like, say yes to everything. I know Jenna does too.
Yeah.
Like I say yes to everything, and I, when you're, obviously at your house, you don't have to say yes to like a dinner, or I don't know, like something else that you have to go to. And I could literally just like sit with myself and write, and I didn't have to like my sleep schedule was like I was like going to bed at 6 a.m. and I was just like staying up in flow and like writing, and then I'd wake up at like 2 and I would like do my thing. Like I just created my own sort of thing.
But you know what's interesting? You gave credit to you being centered to the pandemic, but it was actually how you chose to use the pandemic to take the pressure off,
Oh,
so you
interesting.
could do that.
So true,
Right?
yes.
Because I can't help it. I can't go out, so I get to like stay home and do stuff. Like that's actually in your hands more than outside of you.
That's true.
I
I have to like do that again. And then another time when I was like I'll do certain, like I think that's why people do like writing trips and stuff like that. Like Jenna hosts a bunch where you do like a week long and you block out the time. Like I did that recently, and it felt really really good. I did like a week long thing, and I was like I didn't schedule anything else for that week, and I just like got to kind of um, do the thing. So that's when I like make the best stuff, I think.
I really found that question interesting because, it's so when I think about like how I work best, like within like, if having a panic attack or anxiety, I don't think having a panic attack obviously has ever been like an ideal situation to write in, but anxiety is for me.
That's right.
Because I feel like when you're anxious, it almost stimulates something to be able to trigger a part of your brain that you're unable to necessarily control, which is a good thing in writing because I find sometimes, and just for me personally, sometimes I think when you're too comfortable, you don't challenge yourself. So when you're anxious and you have so much pressure, I feel like, oh my God, you like gotta come with it. And almost like some of this stuff just appears and you don't even know where it came from. It's like but I feel like and it's almost like, I don't know, I feel that it's also caused by adrenaline. Because as I was listening, I was like, adrenaline is definitely something that nerves, right? But it doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation.
That's true.
So that's actually research-based statistically, that they say if you go into any kind of a test or performance situation, mild to moderate anxiety actually enhances performance. And then once you cross over into severe anxiety, like a panic attack, it starts to diminish. So you're right on the money.
It's like finding the sweet spot.
Yes, exactly.
But I remember even like,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's the same with like writing a paper or whatever, and when you're on a deadline and you just like bang it out, and then the next day you're like, how did I write 10 pages about like, like you don't even, because you're just kind of like in the zone. So I think I find that sometimes, or at least like Jenna when we were working like the past month and stuff, like I always think, and when I perform, because I'm really comfortable on stage, definitely, but I think like the adrenaline, like I don't get nervous, I think it's more like adrenaline, but
You
with
get
like
excited.
maybe some like nerves mixed in is when I like play the best.
Well,
it means you care too, like that's what I think, like nervousness means you like actually care about it.
By the way, 100%. I will say, like, there's something about being able to, like, sometimes when they say, like, when you work with somebody for the first time, right, as a songwriter, as an artist, like, you have so much pressure to, like, there's so many other aspects. Are they going to judge me? Do they think I'm good? Do I have good enough concepts? Do I, like, all these things that go through your brain as a creative, right? But when you get comfortable with somebody, like, for example, even like the way that me and Blu are now, like, it's like you work with somebody, at some point you're gonna have to be like, okay, it's like a relationship. It's like, okay, if you're like comfortable with somebody and they're like, okay, yeah, I can like be like, where I can look so ugly in front of you and I don't give a shit, right? It's like the same thing when a writing thing. It's like, how are we gonna like push the envelope and write something great if we're sort of just complacent? Like, not to say that has to be the case if you're close to somebody, but I do think you have to be aware of that, because I think that sometimes you think, oh, okay, yeah, like it's fine, they'll understand. And that's happened even with Blue, like, I mean, in our sessions, I feel like sometimes you're like, oh yeah, pay attention or stuff. But I think about, no, but it's true. And if you think,
I'll be like, get off your phone.
If you came in with an energy to me that made me feel like almost like, oh shoot, like is she okay? Like that tension, I'm gonna react.
Yeah, and you like get it, and then you like get it done, and then you like focus.
So I do find that for whatever reason, that stimulant within myself, that's just like you said, not like the like dive board of like, oh my God, I'm completely like gonna like literally dive board and like just like not be able to function, but like that that line where you're like, okay, like it keeps you on edge and it keeps you like challenging your brain. And you're like, oh my God, I can't even believe I created that. Like that didn't even feel like something I would ever think of, you know?
Yeah, which is exactly what you're like. The combination of the anxiety and the excitement is creative energy. I mean, it's built into the title, right? It's fascinating, but that's exactly what it is. So it's a little bit scary, but it's also really exciting. And you know what's interesting? You feel it in the same place. Like those two feelings, if you kind of check and go, all right, where do I feel anxious when I feel anxious in my body? Where do I feel excited? It's like the same area.
Yeah. It's like, have you guys seen
Pardon?
Have you guys seen the movie Soul?
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, because like
I got you.
The one part of that movie that really I mean, it's incredible, but like the one part of that movie that really stuck with me was the part where you're saying like when you're in your like passion or when you're doing your passion or whatever, you get into like the flow zone, which is like the blue zone, and you're like doing your thing and like nothing, you know, you're just like in it. But how like that zone is the same zone of the dark place. I forget what it was called, but like the dark place basically, and like how it's such a fine line of like in the flow, like in doing your passion, and then like the like obsessiveness and like getting lost, like getting out of touch with reality, and how it's like literally in the same place in your brain sort of, and it's just like a slight
well, that's why like what Jenna was asking before about the ADD stuff, it's like if you see it like that, like a continuum where you can go too far out, it's almost like a balancing act, which gives you a lot more sense that you can actually make changes that give you a way to be the best part of those elements that are built in instead of the worst.
Totally.
You know what I was thinking too, Blue, like about you specifically too. I find you as a like it's as a person, like, and I don't know. I'm like thinking as we're talking, because I feel like you're the type of person that's like sometimes can come across like super reserved or shy or whatever it is, right? But when you're in doing music, I feel like it's almost like what you said, going to the zone where it's like you become something else. So even when you're like, oh, I'm not like particularly stressed about something or whatever, but it's almost like, I don't know. It's like, I'm just like trying to like feed off the energy again about like where that from. But it's interesting because it's almost like you might even not know how you feel sometimes. Does that make sense? And I feel
like that all the time. I'm like,
and I feel like I'm almost like, yeah, and I feel that about you. Like, I feel like it's like you're like, sometimes when you say, oh, like I don't have, with some people, or not even you, but like any, like you or other people that might feel it, they were like, oh, is anything wrong? You're like, no, I'm fine. Like, but they're like insular or whatever. And you're like, but later on, they're like, actually, no, it's so weird. I actually wasn't fine.
Yeah.
And you go to this place and you have the ability, because you're creative, you have ability to have like an outlet. So maybe that's where you're like putting those feelings, but you don't know how to like identify it. And I feel like I recognize that. I don't know, is that even something? Am I sound crazy? I don't know. Lynn, you would know. I mean, I just feel like that's instinctively sometimes how I feel. People sometimes don't know something's wrong, but there really is something wrong.
Well, that actually happens like, sorry, you can go. Sometimes that happens in like my songs. Like I'll sit down, I'll like be feeling a certain thing, but I don't even know what it is or where it's coming from or something. And then I'll write a song that just like comes out, like songs that come out in like, 10 minutes or whatever. Like Figure It Out was like that. And a few of my other songs coming out where I just like spewed lyrics or whatever and just kind of did it in like 20 minutes or whatever. And like it didn't even like, I didn't even know what it was about. And then when I went back and like kind of analyzed what I was saying, it was like exactly how I was feeling. And I had no idea that it just like came out. I had no idea. But that's like the perfect spot of like what we're talking about. But that's happened to me a few times where I'm just like, oh, I guess that's what that was about. Like it was a subconscious like thing where I didn't even realize what I was saying.
Yeah, like that's the zone. And that's, for example, like, yeah, and I don't know, I guess, Lynn, like why I was asking you is like, is it something like maybe even not in like a necessary, like when you're in a therapy session with somebody that's like booked in a therapy session, but just talking to somebody where they're like, I'm fine, like on the surface, like, oh yeah, like everything's great. And like you having so much experience with reading people and energies and knowing how you're kind of like, you know, sometimes you, for me, I don't know if this is a real thing, but I'll be like, I just intensely feel like that's not real, but it's not that they're lying or like pretending. They just like really don't know.
Yeah, they're just not checked in yet to what they're experiencing.
It's so,
You know what I mean? It's totally normal though. Like we're always kind of at different levels of conscious awareness and connection with what's going on inside of us as well as what's going on outside. So that makes perfect sense.
that's so, I find that so interesting because I find it like, it's always, I don't know if it's like, you know, life experience or like, being like, sometimes I'm like, am I an empath? Like I feel things like with my mom sometimes, for example, like I'd be like, what's wrong? And it's like, nothing's wrong. And then all of a sudden, like, yeah, later on, I'll be like, oh, something was wrong. How did you know? And it's just like,
Oh
it's
yeah,
just,
my mom does that too.
you know what I mean? Wait, to you?
Like, yeah, she can just like sense when I'm like, she'll be like, do you have something to say? Like something to tell me? And I'm like, what? I'm like, no. And
But
then later I'm like, wait, I actually feel like I did.
I wonder if that's heightened during the pandemic because all things considered, we're fine. Looking
Right,
at everything else that's going on, we're fine. And I think we kind of feel this need to disclose, again, all things considered, I'm okay, but you're not always actually okay.
Right.
and that's, no, I agree. And that's why I think I started off by asking about the ADD thing, because I think, imagine having these feelings anyway, we all do, but like obviously because we're not able to actually connect in person as much, you're not able to accurately read the room all the time, right? So it's like you think, and especially me, because I feel like I like pride myself, especially as a songwriter, to really like feel people, right? Like for better or for worse, because I'm like, and I'm definitely can be oversensitive to the point where I'm like not right, but like teetering on something that was there, but maybe just completely over exaggerated it. So I think in a situation with the pandemic or being able to have less contact with people, it's just like it makes you even fester more, because you're just like, well, did they like me? Did they like, do they understand? Like all these things that you're like driving yourself, you know?
I get that. I always like make up like situation. Like I get like paranoid that people like are like mad at me for something where like I didn't
No,
because
but
like,
that's
where like
exactly.
I didn't do anything, but like I just like, but I also think that's because of like everyone's social skills are like, we're not in practice, so it's getting like harder. Like I was talking to my friend the other day about this and just like even being on FaceTime or something with someone and just like forgetting how to like answer in a normal way that you would have answered. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah,
just
you're losing your socialization in a way. It's so
Yeah.
funny. So I don't know if you could hear my dog barking. I was trying to mute myself so you didn't. But you know what's funny? There's a whole thing going on now with all the animals in
I
our
was talking about this, yes.
okay, right? Because they're not socialized normally anymore. They completely are losing that awareness that it's okay for other people to be in the world, because they're so isolated in our houses that they don't know what that person is, especially when they're wearing a mask and they can't read it. Just like you were saying, like you're not sure what other people are feeling, because we're really in a weird place where and depends on how you like take cues and how you connect to people. Like even in this context, we're on Zoom, we're not sitting there. It would feel different if we were talking to each other. You
Oh
read
yeah.
more body language, you feel more emotionally like really connected. This is helpful because it's better than just nothing, but it's still different. And if animals are reacting like that, for sure we are.
No, I mean, yeah, you're so right. Because like, my dog, for example, is a pandemic dog. And like, I got her right before this all happened. And like, she always is barking at everyone. And it's just like, and I really do think it's because it's so unfamiliar. It's like, oh yeah, of course, because that's just like a nature of a dog. They think, oh, I have to protect, like, it's just like, this is so unfamiliar, right? And I think, why would they think it's familiar? They have no experience. She hasn't I don't even think I've ever brought her to a dog park. Like,
Right.
maybe twice, before the pandemic. So how would she even?
But see,
Like,
then it kicks in their fear, which is why they're barking, right? Because they don't recognize it. They don't feel safe with it. They're not sure what that person or thing is going to do to them. So they get scared, which is just what Blue was talking about before. Like, I don't know what that person's really thinking, because there's all these degrees of separation between you and the person. Social media, in writing or in a text instead of a conversation, not a visual cue because you're just like communicating in some distant way, or not an emotional one because you're not able to read it from an intuitive level. It's really different and harder, way harder.
and I'm glad you just said that, because to riff off that, I think going back to like, you know, the initial subject of making music in this time period, I think that, you know, that is definitely a struggle, because some people, and a lot, actually not some, a lot of people are just so, you know, nervous about Zoom sessions for this very reason, right? Because first impressions mean so much. And I think that like you may want to work with somebody so bad. You're like, oh my God, I've been dying to work with them. And then they want to work with you. And the first time you meet them is on Zoom. And guess what? Like they may be so cool and they may like really like you, but then they're staring at you like this. And you're like, okay, and you're like, what do I do? Like, and then, but that's just them, but you can't like necessarily like know all their intricate details about how you are as a person. So you immediately put it on yourself, like, oh, it must mean that I wasn't great or whatever. And then it's just like, oh, that relationship or that song could have been so much better, and all these type of things, right? So I think it's definitely there. That's basically been, I think, I don't even want to say negative because I don't want to put that, but it's definitely challenging, put it that way, in terms of this part of the pandemic writing. Wouldn't you say, Blue?
Yeah, definitely. And just like the mixed, like what I was saying before, how like when I was writing during that, like the spot where, you know, everyone was like settled in,
Yeah.
it was still like full quarantine, like you couldn't really, like nothing was open. Like I think when stuff, like I didn't feel any, like I was so chill in it, whatever. And then when stuff started to like come back a bit, with like, you know, outdoor dining or like all those little things, and like people started to see each other again sort of here and there, like obviously I was like happy because I missed like seeing people, but I was like, I felt the like FOMO come back. I felt like certain anxiety was like building up again just from like having that outside like other things to do and like think about, you know.
Do you feel like, how do you feel your Zoom sessions went? Like, do you feel like those things, did you feel like extra uncomfortable with unfamiliar people, or was that like?
Yeah, I mean, a few of them, yeah, just because it's so different, and I don't think that's like how music is meant to like be made necessarily. But then again, I did write one song on Zoom that like has come out, and was great. So, and that was with, it was like a second session after I already met the people. So
Right.
it kind of, but yeah, I had to like get to know. But then I've had some where I've just like, it just takes too much energy out of me, so I kind of stopped doing them. Just because it's so much energy, like just it sucks so much out of you. But I also think even in person now, like just seeing people here and there, like I was gonna mention before, I find myself putting so much more like emotional energy into conversations and stuff. Like not this because we're just like talking freely, but if I were to like meet a new person or whatever, or see someone that I hadn't seen in a second, like it's so much more emotionally tiring to like have a thing with someone. Like have
Wait, because you're concerned about what they're thinking of you, like you're trying to figure that out at the same
just
time.
like the social cues and everything, and just being like, oh, like, you know, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh, like meeting in person, you feel more like more.
Yeah. Like,
Oh.
like tiring, like talking to people and stuff.
Wow. I mean, I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely a thing. I think I was really nervous. Like, oh my God, I still remember the first session I did, like in person after like the months of quarantine. I was so weird. Like I felt like it was so weird. It was like being on a TV show. Like it's like a human. It's like you're like scared of a human. It's like, oh my God, are you a zombie? Like actually, like it felt so strange. But I think when you start to, like you said, when it started to become like slightly more normal to be like social distancing and like the more you did it, the more you're like riding a bike. Okay, yeah, actually I'm a person, I'm able to be social. But like if you're somebody who's like been in and not seen like anyone, I know Hannah's been that way, it's like so much more scarring because you're like, oh, like,
yeah,
you know, like
it's just like,
yeah. And I just think like, yeah. And also, I mean, the positive, I guess, about this situation in terms of what it's taught us as humans is like how resourceful we can be, and like you know, I think as people, it's really taught us, yeah, like how much like it's like, yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it, like how much we can actually do, because a lot of times you wouldn't even think of these things before. So in that sense, it's a cool thing, right?
Yes. So, you know, the flip from the things you guys were talking about before, where part of what you've committed to do is say yes. Like,
Right.
that's amazing. Okay, so then there's one other piece which brings you to the next level, which is kind of what you've been talking about the whole time. That not only do you say yes to everything that happens, everything that comes through your world into your door, but you say thank you. When you can say thank you, then it changes everything. So it's like, even if it's something that doesn't feel good, you trust that there's some reason it might be good for you, or that there's an opportunity to learn, or that it's a challenge. And that spins it into a place where you really are motivated to kind of get in touch with the excitement instead of the anxiety, or the connection instead of the distance, or the time alone instead of wishing that you were with a bunch of people that you can't be with right now. So it doesn't set you up to feel anxious or depressed. Totally different.
Interesting.
Right, that's a really good point.
We do have a question for Blue. It's not an easy question, but I think it's worth discussing. Does being at home all day lead you to reading any negative comments about yourself on social media? I imagine pre-pandemic, you were out and about a lot more and didn't catch possible trolls on the internet.
That's a good question. Yeah, well, I think also just my platform has grown so much during the pandemic specifically. Like it's been growing way faster than it was like before, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I definitely like read some negative stuff, but I actually weirdly it doesn't. I haven't had anything crazy that's really like hit me bad. So I'm lucky to say that. But there's definitely been some things where I've just been like, you're wrong. Like I read stuff where I'm just, and my attitude is just like, you're wrong. So that's how I kind of go about it. But
Good for you.
but most of the things are so not even like, you know, if someone was like, you're fat or something, like that's different than what, like the stuff that I read is like she's not even playing the bass or something, and it's like I am, so like you're just wrong, or like she's like not even good or like something, and I'll be like, well, I've practiced, like I've been playing for a million years, like I'm good, you know what I mean, like, you know, like I'm more like secure in that, so I don't like, I'm just like, you're wrong.
That's great. See, that's
But,
the thing. Self-esteem
yeah.
has to come from within, or else it's dependent on anything out there that's going to keep you like in a roller coaster instead of just constantly centered and happy in yourself and generative.
Yeah, there was one time where I did like clap back at someone. Like sometimes I'll like sometimes, I mean, maybe this is, I know people say not to do this, but there's a few times where people will be like, you know, like she sucks or something, and I'll respond, I'll be like, nah, or something, or like someone will be like, oh, she's not even playing, and I'll be like, LOL, like I'll just kind of like poke fun at it, and then people will be like, oh my god, I didn't know you were gonna read this, like I just looked at your other, like people will just be like, just go back at it because they don't think that you're gonna see it. But there was one thing on my YouTube when I put out this like live video, and this guy was like going on and on about like how it wasn't live and how like you're doing a disservice to your fans by labeling it a certain, like something really specific, like a really weird thing, and I wrote back like a 3-paragraph long, like, yeah, like I just, because it snapped, like it was one of those, I was just like, this is ridiculous, and I got like mad about it. So yeah, and I wrote back like a long thing that was like really technical, like using a lot of like technical, like musical terms, all this stuff, and like, yeah, like really going in, and then the guy responded and was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, like you're so right. Like I did my like it was a whole thing, and I was like, okay, cool, that felt good. He's like, good luck with your journey. Like it was like, oh, and I was like, this is so ridiculous. But then after that happened, I was like, this is so ridiculous. Like I'm not gonna spend my time like writing out 3 paragraphs of like something or whatever. But that's a good question. Yeah.
Oh my god, you know, I think that's such a good question, and I love the assertiveness of the fact that you came back, and I'll tell you why. Is like, again, I was talking about this yesterday, because me personally, like I grew up in Calgary, Canada, which, you know, Canada is very known for being passive aggressive, and people are always like,
so polite.
I'm fine, and you're like, no, you're not, like you're clearly not fine, like let's be real. And so at the end of the day, sometimes I think when you surprise people by like like, but the key is how you say it, because the way that she said it, right, like to be able to actually prove, like, not even like in an egotistical way, the way that you described it, was like, okay, like, let me explain this to you in a way that's not going to be completely offensive or make you be like, you up too, blah blah blah. Like
Like,
that's
I started with like, I understand where you're coming from. Like,
yeah.
I really like went in like super neutral.
But you were being assertive though, like you
That's
were
right.
Totally. And then I would end it with like, if you don't like it, like please kindly like get off my page. Like I would like say something like, I don't know I don't know what I was doing, but like.
But that's so. I think that's so healthy in my opinion.
So healthy.
That's how you right. That's how you diffuse situations. Because I find that the best ways that I've always diffused, if I feel uncomfortable or bad or like insecure, I feel that like if I address it and I call the person, I'll say like, or in person or whatever it may be, hey, I really noticed this, or like, you know, or if you're like, why would you say that? Like, did I do that? You almost like, it's so shocking for them.
No, literally, yeah.
It makes it like, oh, it makes them respect you more. Like,
yeah, I think that's what it is. I think, yeah. And that's what bothers me the most is when I get comments like that are just like blatantly like, yeah, like disrespectful, or just like doesn't give me credit or something. Or people go on and on about like, she's only getting views because she's a girl. Like there was like a whole like fight in my comment section between like different people, like talking about like, if I was just getting views because I was a girl, or like if this was a guy, like it wouldn't get views. Like something like really, I was like, dude, this is like not even worth talking about. Like this is so stupid. But what gets me more upset is like other people like not understanding. So like I feel like it's some like part of my job to like make them understand like why, you know what I mean? Like to explain to them. I think that's why I like come at it more of like a explanation than a just like, oh, like fuck you, like I hate you. You know what I mean? Like I'm more like upset that other people aren't when other people don't like get it.
No, I think that's really healthy. And I, you know, for example, this isn't in relation to comments, but like, for example, like, you know, there was like a friend of mine that like, I feel like constantly I felt like was like putting me down, but in a way that was very like, yeah, I guess more passive, but like in a way that I felt uncomfortable with, right? I was like, this is like not making me feel good, but I'm taking it because I don't want to cause a conflict, right? Which is oftentimes where you just like look at this stuff and you let it fester, but you don't actually address it. But I found like I when I addressed it, it was just like nipped it in the bud, and then it was having they respect you more. So there's something like to be said about doing that, because you have to like, you almost have to take a second, like you said, Lynn, and just like, even in that respect where you're like, okay, read the comment, and you're like, no, that's absolutely not true. I love myself. I'm happy. Like, you know, like all these things
exactly.
that you and then make a decision how you're going to react. Because, you know, like when people react too fast, it's like, that's when it's bad. You're like punch them, or like, you know what I mean? Like that, like heated thing.
Right. And also you got to consider the source. If this is somebody that's actually like legitimately saying something critical that is sort of like, you know, you can tell that they're actually engaged in what's really going on and they're rational, you know what I mean? But they're looking at it from a perspective that's like different from the way you're they were supposed to interpret it, or they're missing something. You're having a conversation about like working some miscommunication or misperception out. That is so healthy. If though it's like a true like troll, just hater, that kind of stuff, that's problematic, because then you're just engaging with somebody whose motivation is just to make themselves feel a little more stable by putting somebody else down. In that context, take that time to, you know, like really stroke yourself, give yourself some reassurance that
like,
you're not, that you're fine, you're good, and let that piece go, because, you know, clearly their stuff has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess like for anybody who's watching, and for Blu and for Lynn, I would, you know, want to ask you guys, like, okay, so Blu, you obviously are confident you're somebody that's able to like really understand how to, you know, diffuse those situations, but not everybody's like that, you know? So what advice would you give to somebody that like puts their art up and gets, isn't necessarily as confident or as experienced? Like, is there anything that you would suggest, or, you know, for them to read their comments and maybe that like, you know, deflates them to the point of not wanting to put up another song, or like maybe feeling like they're not good enough? Like, what would you like suggest for somebody going through that?
I mean, I don't know. Well, I think I wasn't obviously like always like that. Like and I still have like insecurities, like everyone, of course. But I think in terms of just like playing or like writing or just being an artist or whatever, I think like I used like all my like I guess like nervousness or maybe like fear as motivation to like get better. Like that's I think how I like I used it. So instead of, you know, letting that, you know, kill your whole thing and being like I quit, I give up, like I would anytime that I would get those thoughts, I would just use that to motivate me to like practice a bunch so that no one could say those things, you know. That's
Wow.
like, yeah, like I would just like, if anyone was like, oh, like she's like, that's why I think now if someone comments like, oh, she's not good, I'm like so secure in myself and know that I like practice so much that like that's wrong, you know what I mean? But if I was like 5 years ago or whatever when I first started and someone was like, you know, you're not good, like of course I wasn't good, I just started. But I would like, but I used that, like I practiced so much so that people couldn't say those things, you know what I mean? That's like,
Well, they can say them, but you won't take them in. So
yeah,
you're
but I won't
creating
take
a
them in.
sense
But
of,
back then,
Yeah.
I would take them in, and then I would use that as motivation to get better. But I also, we were talking about this the other day, but I also think that comes from like being a girl too and having to like prove yourself, and then using that energy to really like to really motivate to just get like really good at what you do, I guess.
well, that, and also you said that prove yourself, but you're proving yourself to you. And as soon as you do that, then it's in like there's no need to defend yourself because you don't even feel attacked. You just don't personalize anybody else's negative comments.
That's totally what it is. It's like the not personalizing and like proving yourself to yourself. Yeah, I think that's what I've been doing, or like I'm still
So you
getting.
know what you're doing?
on
You're
the road.
shifting your self-worth to an internal place instead of an external one.
Totally.
That's the whole, and that's that's the
Love
really
that.
important thing to do.
Key. That's the key, though. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's where I think like people will be scared of putting their stuff out or whatever. But if you're happy with it, you know, then no one can say like it can't bother you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like actually, Harry Styles said this quote one time. I'm just gonna drop it. Just gonna drop it. But Harry Styles said one time, I was like watching an interview, and he was saying like, I don't know, if you're like really happy with what you do and you're like proud of what you do or like what you make or whatever, then no one can say like you're unsuccessful or it's like bad or whatever, because it's just, you just have to be, you know, good with it. So
No, and I love that you said that. And again, it's like with the nervousness of this pandemic and feeling like, you know, the nerves are rising and making music during this time, again, going back to that, you know, that's another way to look at it in a positive way, because you can think, okay, cool, you can take those nerves and maybe if it makes you more insecure, right, reading those comments, you actually have more time to practice and more time to perfect those things. You actually can turn that energy, bad energy, into good energy by right? So like it's things like that. It really, and you know, that's a whole nother thing. And I know we love talking about it, but that's like what manifestation is, right? It's like manifesting, but like for bad or for good, right? And we talked about this in the last episode.
like
but
positive manifestation.
Yeah, you just have to focus on the positive manifestation out of whatever even the negative is. If you can take the positive out of that and figure out how to actually make that into energy that you can use, then they're almost you're like, thank you for putting me down. I'm actually better now.
Yeah, literally, because then there's like a bad, you don't want to, I think it gets unhealthy when it's like, when you're like in your head like I suck so much, like I have to do this and do this, like I suck, like I don't agree with that. So I think it's like like the positive side of it, you know.
Then is there any like what I mean besides, is there anything else that like you think in terms of people going through that, advice that you would suggest for anybody?
What, the part about the internal evaluation and stuff?
Yeah, like just right now, like if they're putting out music during this time and you know there may be even more insecurity or more time on their hands to read the comments, like is there any other things that you can suggest to people going through that?
Well, you just nailed it, because you kind of did automatically, like out loud, what I was talking about doing a few minutes ago, where I said you take what's happening and you not only say yes to it, even something like the pandemic, but you figure out what to be grateful for within it, and then you thank it. You can acknowledge that you can receive something. You can create something that then you will be grateful for in the opportunity, in the challenge, in the obstacle, in the difficulty, whatever it is. So it's not like it looks positive, but when you figure out that it is on that macro level, looking back on stuff that was challenging, it's always been growthful. So what are you going to do with it? makes you resilient and makes you grateful, keeps you present, and creates the kind of self-esteem that you're talking about right now as you guys are interacting with a world that is full of people who are going to think negative and positive because of who they are and not what you do.
Totally.
I love that. Now my dog's barking.
I know, I'm so glad.
It's not only my
I feel
I'm
better.
like, see, this is the socialization part of the story arc that we
Yeah.
just to prove that was right. Hannah, do we have any other questions as our last question to wrap up for the?
Organically, we've answered all of the questions, and I actually think Dr. Lynn's last point is the best way to wrap this up. This has been amazing.
Cool.
This has been so great. I'm so happy we made this happen. In fact, I think we just got something saying in the chats that this was like people's like favorite. They love this one, so that's
really?
so good.
I honestly feel like so much better. I feel like I'm a little more calm today. Like I woke up this morning, like I basically didn't sleep last night, guys. Jenna, you know, but like just because I'm finishing up all my stuff or whatever for the next few things coming out. But I like woke up this morning like so stressed, and now I feel great. So.
Oh well, that's
You
so
have
good.
it. Sometimes just talking it out feels better. So that's another point.
I'm so glad you say that because that's another like common thing that we bring up on this. Because I always think like talking it out and doing these kind of things.
Like journaling is good if anyone, like, I don't know. I know that helps a lot of people. It helps me a little bit, but I know that helps a lot of people too.
Just writing anything down, being able to like really identify the feelings that you're feeling. And I think being able to take time for yourself, because even doing something like this, I find is so great because it's like not necessarily the end goal really is to, you know, give back to mental health and help people and become more like, you know, united as like a mantra for 2020 and 21, you know, hopefully. But I feel like that's something that it just like it's just a genuinely good feeling, and there's really no like goals like, oh, this is going to, you know, make me tons of money, like, you know, it's like if anything, I mean, again, going back, actually I should mention this, if anybody you know, feels comfortable, we do have a donation link for the Jed Foundation, which, you know, goes back to mental health. But that's really the reason. And I think that, you know, again, not only talking it out makes you feel better, but giving back also does too, you know. So I think making time.
Well, and you guys sharing how you feel, I mean, it connects people automatically because people will elevate you just by, wow, you know, those guys are really something. And they feel like sort of automatically less than, a little bit more inferior. But when they realize that you feel things like they feel, it's the most healthy, healing thing that can happen to all of us, because then we're not alone. Even in a flippant pandemic when everybody's isolated, we're all in the same thing. We all feel the same way.
Exactly. And I totally agree with you. And I love that idea because I thought, wow, like what an interesting thing too. Like sometimes with, you know, people that you look up to, or maybe like, you know, anybody, whoever that may be, you think, oh, their life looks so great. And like, that is what we've been trained to do in social media. But like, let's be real. Every single person that I've ever met is not perfect. And by the way, not perfect is great. Like nobody wants perfect, like, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, flaws are what makes us us. So I think to talk about it and to like even coming from somebody that you might like, you know, people listening to your music, Blue, or whatever, being here being like, wow, like that's so cool. Like the fact that I'm experiencing this means that maybe I'm not so bad after all.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So anyway, on that note, well, you guys are the best. This has been awesome. Yeah,
guys.
Till next time. No, this is awesome. And we're gonna we'll probably have this episode up in the next 3 weeks, so I'll send it to you guys to post. And, again, yeah, I'll send you all the links for donations and for the Jed Foundation. And till then.
Cool. Thank you.
That's it, guys. Thank you so much.